I always try to take away wisdom from people who have been there longer and done it bigger and experienced more than I have. And, I'm always learning, always
Sure.
learning, always learning. And because there's always somebody that's smarter than you, right?
Sure.
And not long ago, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago, Bob Merrick, that was the CEO of Ladder and Bloom, he came into our office and I said, so what do you see and what would you do personally? And he said, hunker down, save your cash, cut your expenses, and watch for opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a cash out refi and I sat on my cash and I'm waiting for that opportunity.
Nice.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, welcome to the Strategic Success Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Fricky. Thanks for tuning in. My friend, Sabrina, I've enjoyed, I don't know when you and I met, but it's been years and I've enjoyed it. So let's jump into a little bit about you. All right, so I did not know this, but you went to Ole Miss and you graduated cum laude in financial analysis. I don't think I knew this.
Really?
I did.
Wow.
Okay, so that's exciting. So you were born in Plaquemines, right? Born and raised over there, so that's awesome. I love that. So in 2006, you started with Gardner. Mm-hmm. All right, so then that moved into
You
now
rode out the Gardner wave all the way to the end. Wow.
I'm a surfer.
Yeah. I mean,
I love that. I love that. All right, so you own and manage rental properties in St. Tammany, but you also practice in the surrounding areas, right? Mm-hmm. And you have always been very, very much a professional and a leader, but also a student. I know you talk about that a lot. There's a lot that you do to continue your education, but there's a lot that you do to serve. So let's talk through some of that. So you obviously give back, both locally and wider than that, but you volunteer with Boy Scouts of America. That's with your son, right?
is he an Eagle Scout?
So
Working towards it?
I have two older children, 25 and 26. He is an Eagle Scout, and then my 7-year-old is a Tiger Cub. So this is my second go round
wow.
in
Going through
Scouts.
it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's excellent. So you do a lot with NOMAR, so the New Orleans Metropolitan
Association of
Why am I
Realtors.
having a hard time with that word today? Association of Realtors. You do with Louisiana Realtors, Louisiana Realtor Political Action Committee, and those are a lot that you do on the real estate side. Then you also do stuff with the community side. So you've got the North Shore Food Bank, the Samaritan Center. You've got the Habitat for Humanity and Coquille Sports Complex, and so that's awesome. Obviously, you're a mom as well, and doing things, and so you're a badass agent. You're doing stuff leadership wise, giving back to the community, continuing to learn, right? Doing all those things. So you currently are on the board of directors for NOMAR, and as well as the Louisiana Realtor Association board of directors for that. So that is awesome. And so I know we can dive into a lot more. So let's do that. Let's share more into that. So you've been doing this for a quick minute. Since 2006. First of all, not every agent can say that. We've got agents who've been in this business for varying times, and so I can always appreciate when someone has been in the business for more than a minute, where COVID wasn't their first tricky market, right? And so you've seen a lot of things. And so it's been fun over the years, I'm sure.
I always try to take away wisdom from people who have been there longer and done it bigger and experienced more than I have. And, I'm always learning, always learning. And because there's always somebody that's smarter than you, right?
Sure.
And not long ago, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago, Bob Merrick, that was the CEO of Ladder and Bloom, he came into our office and I said, so So what do you see and what would you do personally? And he said, hunker down, save your cash, cut your expenses, and watch for opportunity. And I did a cash out refi, and I sat on my cash, and I'm waiting for that opportunity.
Nice.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Right? It's coming.
No, I'm not saying today's the day, but I'm definitely seeing things I haven't seen in a while. And the only people who can take, stab at that is the people who have cash or who know how to, who know how to maneuver, who know how to structure.
So let me ask you a question about that. So you started in 2006 and you were with Gardner the entire time, your career until Mr. Glenn sold the company. And I think a lot about, there's a lot of opportunity and people don't stay put in this business for very long. So I have a feeling that the values that Mr. Glenn had are going to relate a lot to the values that Sabrina has. So what made you stick around that brokerage for as long as you did in an industry that doesn't usually have people stick around that long?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So, brokers that do their job and make those recruiting calls and have those breakfasts and have those coffees and what have you, I've had a lot of those. And anytime, being an independent contractor, you have a lot of time alone, right? But you also have a lot of opportunity to do things outside of a 9 to 5. That being said, it's a double-edged sword. But when you're vocal and you do things well, and you stick with something, sometimes you get noticed for that, and that's great. But ultimately, if I ever felt uneasy or unsettled or the grass is greener on the other side, I said, you know what am I unhappy about? And what can I do to fix that? And ultimately, it had nothing to do with my brokerage. It had to do with me.
Yeah.
And what am I doing or what am I not doing or what could I do better?
I think that's powerful because a lot of people jump ship because the grass seems greener on the other side. In reality, they go there and like, oh, well, I was promised, but I realized it came with the same work that the other place came with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I understand there's also semantics, right? There's also technical stuff like support, whether it's training, whether it's technical support, whether it's office support, whatever that looks like. But I definitely can appreciate you taking that ownership, saying like, okay, but what role do I play in this?
Yeah.
But I will also go back to say, on a lighter note, Gardner always threw a good party. They always, they were 100% in. They 100% backed their agents. You definitely felt like you were there because they wanted you there. And it was definitely a family-oriented culture.
Yeah. No, you can feel that. And I think it's important people find their people, right? Well, there's plenty of times that I've, let me say, learned from certain teachers or done certain things. I'm like, you know what? I can respect it and I can learn from it. But you know what? These aren't my people.
Yeah.
And whatever that, and I can respect it for what it is. But then when you find your people, it's also, and so it's important to have that culture to where people can acknowledge that.
Yeah. I get the call. I work with a lot of agents, a lot of brokers, and I get the call all the time. And I think that there's different places, different people. And that it always comes down to, one, what are your gifts and weaknesses, and does that broker support your gifts and or it does support your weaknesses unless you exploit your gifts? But also, it can come down to the culture and the values that company has, right? And every brokerage has their own little mini culture. Even within a brokerage, offices can have their own mini cultures, and so you got to find the one that you fit in with the best that's going to support you in the way that you do. And I think that if you work for a company, as long as their values don't infringe on yours, you can be there for a while. Sure. But the longer you're there and the more you get involved in that brokerage or that company, the more you have to align with the values. And if you get up to the top, you really have to be in lockstep with them or you're not going to be there for very long. And so I think, I know the Gardner family relatively well. I got the opportunity to see them interact with some of their clients. And I think that, like you said the word family, and I know that was a big deal for them. And so I would imagine that the way that you appreciate the brokers that you were with is a lot about how you treat your clients, right? And again, it tells just the two things you said in that when you were just talking about them was they treat you like family, which I'm certain you treat your clients like they're your family, and they enjoy celebrating their people. And I know that you like celebrating the victories whenever you buy or sell a house or just anything that your clients experience, right? So and it was a pointed question for a reason, but I had a feeling that it was going to tell a lot about you as a person, just knowing that you've been there and you were there for so long.
Yeah.
So, but also the best thing you said is that a lot of people think that it's the place that I'm at that's the problem, and don't look at themselves to think, how can I be better? And and I know you like to learn. So how do you keep up with the industry, and what are you doing to continue to learn and be better agent every year? You've been doing it for 20 years, and I'm assuming that you've gotten better every year.
Oh, goodness. Well, like I said, if you're not growing, change happens so quickly. Yeah. So if you're not with it or chasing it, you're dying. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're actually going backwards.
Mm-hmm. I once had I have a quote on my desk at home that says, "The only competitive advantage I have is to adjust quicker to change." And there's a level in which that you could argue that point, but it's true, right? And so there's a lot going on in the industry, and so continue. What I can appreciate is some people think they arrive. You know what I mean? After some time under their belt. And so that is something I greatly appreciate about you, because you have time under your belt, and so you're experienced, but you're also in leadership roles. But you're not willing. You are willing to put down, let's call it ego, whatever, and say, hey, I want to learn. I want to come here. And so I've always appreciated that about you.
And likewise, I acknowledge agents that have been doing this on a bigger scale or longer than I have when I'm sitting in a CE class next to them. Mm-hmm. Or if I go to an awards ceremony or something that's, mundane or redundant, I like to acknowledge people and say, hey, I appreciate the fact that you're here, because I know you don't have to be.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. I like that. But, I'm a lifelong learner. I am definitely learning based. I feel like, my dad used to say, did you learn something today? Okay, you can go home. Because if you haven't learned anything, you haven't done enough, right? Yeah. And I think that holds true even now. I've taken the accredited buyer representation class 2 or 3 times, and it's only, what are we, April?
Yeah, something around for a couple months.
Point. Because I think it's that important. The information in that course has been updated based on the status of the National Association of Realtors settlement terms.
So the changes happening in the market currently. So you're going back to that for like real time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's very timely. We're kind of at a pivotal point in time in this profession where you can choose to adapt or you can get out. Mm-hmm. Like there's really no other option. I think, after Katrina, our city was in I say our city, New Orleans. Mm-hmm. Shout out to the West Bank too. But New Orleans was.
Wait, what was that?
It was West Bank.
That's awesome.
Which my kid, by the way, he said West Bank to Mendeville. How you like that?
There you go.
That's funny. Okay.
Side note, you can edit that out.
No, that's definitely staying.
But it was a pivotal point in time where you could it was almost a blank slate where you could recreate this city into many, many different things. You could enrich it and grow it. And what you do is up to the leadership at that point. I feel like as realtors, we're really kind of at a pivotal juncture in the road to where we can level up, we can be defensive, or we can be offensive.
Yeah.
You can sit and whine and say, why'd they do this to us? I'm a victim or I'm a player.
Yeah.
Right?
Every time, and you've been doing this since 2006. Mm-hmm. Several things have happened where people freaked out thinking that the whole industry was going to change, when the reality is just provided opportunity for people who are looking for it. It was Katrina was a big deal around here in 2006, right when you got started.
Well, then right after that was 08, 09.
Financial crisis, and you had TRID. I remember people forgot about that, but whenever RESPA started coming out and the CFPB started putting all these rules in place, everybody thought that the whole industry was going to be a totally different thing, and it made us better, I think. I mean, of course, I never really got to deal with the HUD much, but I got into the business, and somebody was like, "Hey, what is this closing disclosure? Will you figure this out for me?" So that was my first project. But and then you had COVID, and now we're going through this. It's just going to be an opportunity for the agents who want to change and pivot to have opportunity to grow. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing who's going to, who's going to run with it. There's going to be somebody that nobody anticipated or didn't know they were excel through this market because of the things that are happening, and they're going to take advantage of it, no doubt.
Sure.
Yeah, old habits die hard, but I'll tell you that in every circumstance, there is positive. Sometimes, like Shrek, you just got to peel back the onion.
Yeah.
Right? Well, we got a couple layers here because
Sure.
we got a lot of moving parts. But I feel like now is the time, if you've ever seen value in being a professional, recreate yourself right now.
Which is the upper hand
Right
that you're
now.
going to have walking into the market. Like, you've dressed professionally the entire time I've known you, and some people wear flip flops and shorts to a listing appointment. So
Stop that.
I'm
Stop
that
that.
people coming here doing that. So why is it so important to you to actually be a professional and treat this this business as a business?
And I think it extends past dressing. I think it's how you carry yourself. It's when you show up to the room. I mean, obviously, right outside of this, you were talking with another, with a broker and having good conversations, right? Like, you're respected in those rooms. Not everyone is respected in the rooms that they walk into, or even, frankly, known, right? So like that. There's also, like, let's be real, that's a part of the equation. But this is not a part-time hobby for you. This is something you take very seriously. So yeah, talk to us about that.
So I'll say two things. Neither of my parents graduated high school. They both got GEDs. English was my dad's second language. He was born in South Louisiana. He learned English beginning maybe like 4th, 5th grade, when going to school wasn't even mandated. Like, that came into law, and you had to learn English. So they brought the teachers out of the schools and sent them away to learn English so that they could infuse English into the schools.
He was
in the
he
30s.
spoke French? Mm-hmm. That's very cool.
In the 30s. That being said, I was the first person to graduate from college in my family, and I felt like that was a gift that I was given that I needed to use. You talk about using your time, your talents, your treasures. I pretty much came out of the womb just like I am now. I've always been more on the serious side, but a jokey kind of way.
Yeah.
So I do find value in levity. So, when things get super serious or super stressful or whatever, even at a funeral, my dad's funeral, we were laughing and cutting up, not out of disrespect, but out of
Sure.
that's what he would want, right?
Sure.
But, my mother is overweight. I've always been overweight, and I always felt that extra sense of I have to earn my place at the table, and I have to overcome every stereotype that anyone has. So I have to prove myself every day. And I find that to be important.
How do you calibrate that, though, on a daily basis? How do you determine whether you've done that? Is that something you're intentional with?
I'm always very intentional about my presentation, but mindset is always a struggle. I think for everybody, because everybody's got something, whether it's your weight or your height or your
I mean, I
money
had a list
or your
for
whatever.
a long time or whatever.
Yeah.
Like various things. Not a lot of people know that. I had a list for a long time. And I would stutter whenever I would, I went through school. I went through speech therapy. Whatever those things are, that when you show up, you're like, hey, I feel a little less than or whatever. And so then what do? You overcompensate, right? And so I can understand that. I mean, and being a woman in the industry as well, I understand that you feel like, hey, I'm wanting to compensate to kind of make up for where others maybe not respect my place here. But at the same time, it's hard because it's one of those things where eventually you're like, hey, I want to stand on my own 2 feet, right? Versus, always wondering if the ground's stable, right?
It's funny that you say that because for a long COVID was a paradigm shift in so many ways for so many people.
Sure.
I could go an hour just on that, but I will say that authenticity was something that came out of COVID for me because, everybody started filming themselves.
Yeah.
You saw people in their pajamas and you saw people in their natural habitat, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And the people on social media or the influencers were the real regular people that were dancing on their patio or singing with their kids and what I took from that was growth mindset. I said, I stopped apologizing for the space that I take up in a room, for the opinions that I have, for the way that I feel about certain things, for the things that I love and the things that I despise. I quit apologizing for that, and I own that.
Yeah.
And either I'm for you or I'm not, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because Ninja Selling says that if you're authentic and you love on your people and you take care of your people, the right people will be attracted to you. You don't have to chase them.
We had this conversation in front of a room of 100 people last year whenever we were talking about your database. Remember that? I mean,
was there.
Hey guys, Courtney Fricky here. We've got Aussie Steve. And look, if you have a deal that needs to get moved, Southeast Louisiana, even in South Mississippi, we're your folks. We are the largest dispo company, really in the greater New Orleans area, even Southeast Louisiana. We have great contacts in South Mississippi as well. Steve, why do we move more deals than others?
Just we're very deep in this market. So Greater New Orleans can be really confusing for national wholesalers. The comps are hard. We change block for block. We got flood zones. We get a lot of hurricanes and the likes. And just a lot of the national platforms don't have the buyers on their list. So we are deep with buyers, but we're deep with relationships, which is really important in this market. So we love JVing with out-of-state investors.
Like I said, we do a ton of business with other investors. So go to homebuyerlouisiana.com/Courtney. Fill out the information. We'll get in touch with you, and we'll move this deal along.
we were going back and forth about it, and you said you had a bunch of people in your database, and I truly believe that if you do business with people that you love, that love you, you're going to have a much more enjoyable career, but you're going to have a much more successful career because you're going to be able to find opportunities to serve them and help them because you're going to be able to spend more time with them and just have better conversations.
Sure.
And I think it's great because I translate. Say you talk about social media. The point of social media, in my opinion, if you're not on there just to see what everybody else is doing all day, is to put yourself out there to attract the people
Exposure,
to you that
yeah.
you want to do business with.
Sure.
If you, people all the time say, "Well, I don't want to post too much. I don't want people to leave my social media page and get aggravated with me." You want all of those people to leave that would get aggravated with you for posting, and the people that stay are now the people you can intentionally build a relationship with and do business with. That's what I think social media is for. That's why I am doubling down on posting as much as I can on social media to attract people that I want to do business with. It's clear. I'm like the people who at this point don't like or comment or follow us on social or come to my events are probably not the people that I want to do business with for a reason. And so that's why I continue to double down on people that I know and that I enjoy doing business with.
Yeah.
So I think that you're 100% right. Be genuine. That's what people want. They're going to trust you more if you are that way. And then you're going to do business with people that you love. You have a much more enjoyable career. And I'm glad I'm glad that you realize that because I think that it's gonna help you grow. And like Ninja says, I mean, do business with people that you love. Add value to people that you love.
I think that's critical. So I had a big shift in 2019 for social media where I had been a silent professional. No one knew what I was doing with houses or helping people or the type of skill sets I had. And I can contribute this to Grant Cardone. I learned a lot from him about on the marketing side where he said, hey, my name's Grant. If you don't know who I am or what I do, that's my fault. And so part of that is taking ownership.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that. Like, hey, my name's Courtney. If you can't tell me what I do, like if you don't know it, like I asked a lot of people, hey, what do you think I do? Like, I don't know. Are you a real estate agent? I'm not. They're like, well, someone houses. I'm like, the fact that you don't know clearly means my message is not clear. Mm. And a huge part of that message being clear is like, hey, how can I help you and what do I do? But it's also being authentic, right? And so I was literally just trying to remember if one of the first times I met you or one of the times you came to North Shore RIA, I was trying to remember if it was you, but someone came up to me and they said, hey, I felt like, from watching your videos, I felt like I knew you. And that's a goal. And so I can really appreciate your authenticity because I can say that you haven't wavered from that and from in the years I've known you in the sense of you are who you are. There's some people you're like, hey, who am I getting today? My
husband might argue that fact.
But it's one of those days where it's like, I not everyone leads with authenticity, and I can always appreciate that, because at the end of the day, I myself as well am trying to allow myself to take up the space, right? Like the fact that all right, so I fly out in like 2 days to go speak in Ohio. And the last time I spoke up in Ohio, it was a larger crowd. I went and got my hair straightened. I did this whole thing. And and in my slide, I literally had a picture of which is like my headshot, which is where my hair is straightened. And then I had a picture of me with a hat on. I said, hey, if you can't find me in the crowd, this is going to be what I look like. Right. And so I did that. This time in preparation for speaking, and this happened when I was speaking in Richmond about 6 weeks ago, I said in front of a larger crowd, I said, you know what? I asked the host if it was okay that I wear my hat, but I said, hey, this is me feeling authentic. I'll still dress up with it, right? Not necessarily. I'm not going to go show up there with like, flip flops or whatever, but this is me with an authentic approach to it. But because it didn't feel authentic, including that photo in my slide. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like there was a level there. And so with that being said, coming back to it, so I can appreciate you being authentic. I can appreciate your willingness to learn, and like you seeing that this is a time where, people are either going to adjust and really level up, like you were saying, or they're going to fade out. And we're seeing a lot fade out. I feel like I keep coming across posts of people who are leaving the industry or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, there's another one, right? But I know that the way that stuff that's going on in the industry is one thing, but the way that you show up for your clients, if this is how you show up in your conversations, as far as, the authenticity, you're wanting to learn, doing things like that, and one way that you put it is like, I'm easy to work with. You talk about grace and some things like that. That's huge. Because there's some people who, I am who I am, baby. And but they're not easy to work with. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they can, there is something powerful about standing on your own 2 feet, but also making room for other people. Mm. You know what I'm saying? Like, not a lot, some people, they advocate for themselves too much, and so there's no room for anyone else, if that makes sense. And so I can appreciate that. So talk to me about, working with clients. So you work all over the region. Mm-hmm. So even down in Plaquemines, where you're from. Mm-hmm. And do you primarily work with sellers, buyers? Like, what does that look like for you today? So I know you work with a lot, but
I've always split my business because I feel like diversification is important. It keeps my skill set sharp on both sides. Mm-hmm. And I think when you have market shifts, it hedges your risk, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. That being said, Lewis Williams, he did a class many years ago about millionaire real estate agent. And it stuck out to me that at that point, he said a healthy business is 60-40. He said, so I always try to maintain, whether you prefer listings or buyers, 60-40 one way or the other. And he said the same thing. So I said, okay, so that thought process was probably valid.
Yeah, that's good.
So just to get validation.
What are you, 60-40 listings or buyers?
Probably at this moment, buyers.
Yeah.
It's probably healthier to have listings, but in an increasing interest rate market, it may flip.
There's buyers out there. They're just not. They're not ready to make offers yet. But you're looking, right?
Yeah.
So, do you work with real estate investors?
I do.
You do?
I do.
And so, is it multifamily? Is it single family? What type of investors are you working with?
So, primarily in St. Tammany, we find single family. Mm-hmm. There's just not as much multifamily inventory here as maybe some surrounding parishes.
No, absolutely. Like the St. Tammany has so little multifamily compared to like Orleans and other places.
There are people who are trying to change that.
Well, I know you. So let me say this. I know you work a lot with REOs. Mm-hmm. Has that something that you've done since 2006, or is that something on and off, or is that something that's been picking up lately? What does that look like?
So fun story. The way that I got into the REO business, my broker at the time was Sandy Sandusky, and I sat in his office and I said, I don't know if this is for me. I said, I mean, I need lunch money. I quit my
Some
full-time
consistent
gig.
business, yeah.
And he said, look, he said, don't jump out right before you make it big. He said, don't give up. This is for you. He said, what about doing BPOs? And I'm like, what's a BPO? So BPO is a broker's pricing opinion. And at the time, keep in mind, this is like 2007, 2008. It was
That was the
just
heyday for it.
just before the rubber stamping saga came up with the banks, right? At one point, and I think he knew this. I think he knew that it was lunch money, but he knew that it was a skill sharpening tool, right? So I signed on with a couple of BPO vendors. I call them puppy mills. I can say that now because it's been a long time. But at one point, the most I ever did in one day was 8.
Damn.
8 BPOs in one day.
Is that like a CMA?
Yes.
Okay.
But you get paid.
I mean, you have to go to the property to take photos. You've got to like run comps.
So it was a drive-by with comps and pictures. And I mean, you got paid, pauper wage. But what I started to realize is I was like a rapper, man. I could freestyle. I could drive through a neighborhood and tell you how big that house was, how much those houses were. In any given neighborhood, you could tell me a street name and I could tell you what subdivision it was in. Now, that's been a long time. But what happened as a direct result was that my pricing skills were so sharp.
Yeah.
Because I did it literally not hundreds, thousands of times.
Wow.
Thousands of times over several years. And because if you make $30 to $80 per transaction and you make like $8,000 in a year that way,
Yeah.
that's a lot of
deals.
comps.
Yeah,
That's a lot of neighborhoods.
Well, okay, so let me pose it. First of all, funny story one time, a hard money lender was trying to get me to do a BPO. I was like, I'm not licensed. And whoever I was talking to was like, it doesn't matter. I was like, so anyway, so.
You have to be licensed to do BPO?
No, they emailed,
because you have to be paid through your broker.
Oh, I see.
And they want you to pull MLS comps, all this stuff,
True.
right?
Okay.
And so there's stuff like that, but like at the end of the day, I remember they sent me stuff. I said, honey, stop. But anyway, there's something to be said about willing to put in the reps, right? Number one, putting in the reps so that the consistent income, right? Most people, their income isn't consistent because they're not consistent. You could have done 50 of those BPOs and quit. But you're like, hey, this is going to put food on the table consistently as I work through the listings and whatnot. So I can appreciate that. Second of all, a lot of people say, oh, I don't like the job I currently have, and I want to quit my job and get into real estate investing or whatever. But maybe they're just, and sometimes that's the right move for people. But I also say, hey, whatever job you have, try to get a skill from it. And so even though maybe you're like BPOs are not the main thing I was going to go do, you got a skill out of it. And I think that speaks to, again, being teachable and willing in that moment, saying, hey, look, this is not the end all be all for me, but I'll be damned if I don't walk away with something that, I can add to my tool belt. And so again, that experience gave you so much. What did that look like moving forward? Like, how did you kind of rely on that, or what did that look like?
How do you utilize that skill?
It? Yeah.
So the leverage in the BPOs, again, was a ninja principle before ninja was a thing. So your next deal is embedded in your current deal, right? So my next deal was a contact that I made through doing the BPOs, introduced me to REOs. REOs became a big thing shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
09, what was that, like 08, 09 into 13, right? Or something like that.
And so I got heavy into the REO scene at that point. And then REOs kind of went away. But what I was left with was a great pricing skill set. And really, I would use it in my listing presentations to talk to sellers about,
100%.
This is kind of my jam.
Yeah.
Like numbers are my thing, stats are my thing.
You've got a financial analysis degree.
It's kind of my jam.
Well, no, okay, but that's huge. And one of the things we often say is the more deals you do, the more deals you do, because at the end of the day, there's something to be said about skill sets that are developed through volume as well.
Sure.
Right, because you can be like, hey, I'm really good at running numbers, but if you ran numbers on 5, but if you ran numbers on 500, if you ran numbers on 5,000, like there's something about a strength of that muscle. Just think about it. And that I think that's huge when we're talking to sellers. We're like, look, like that's I love that. So keep going.
So data interpretation is like I totally nerd out. I love it. But where were we? So
So the
Oreos,
Oreos kind of pulled off the shelf.
and then I leveraged that into my listings to interpret market stats and trends and say, what's happening, what has happened, where are we going? I love the national scene. Like we're usually lagging behind, right? So I like to go to things outside of my backyard. I like to commingle with people who think differently, people that do things differently, because that's how I grow. And I like to come back and bring that back to my business and my home and my company and say, have you thought about it this way?
Yeah.
I think that's a big reason why I choose to be in NOMAR, which is a larger board in the area, because there is diversity of membership, there's diversity of thought process, there's diversity of business practice. And I truly, it's in my bio, it's on my website, I truly value diversity. Changed my mind.
Well, I think it's huge. I mean, I'm from the North Shore. I live on the South Shore now. And, I started investing on the North Shore, and then eventually I started investing on the South Shore. It's night and day. And then even knowing folks over there, I knew a whole bunch of folks on the North Shore. I went to the South Shore and I was like, crickets. Like I thought I knew folks. I mean, there's a handful, but it's huge. And it's funny. You can always see. Sometimes I can spot a South Shore agent on the North Shore from a mile away, and vice versa, a North Shore agent on the South Shore. So it's huge, and I'm learning more and more the diversity they bring to the table, because some people are like, because it is so very close, and people are like, oh, I can make the drive, but like New Orleans is very different than Mandeville. And I'm not saying people can't cross that border and work both. It's, hey, you've got to surround yourself with people who know. It's huge.
Do you do market reports for your clients?
I do.
Like the ninja taught?
Oh, like the face-to-face, belly-to-belly.
I mean,
I can be better about that.
I think that tool that Mr. Larry teaches is by far one of the most amazing
if it's
tools.
Someone who's receptive to that and somebody that wants that information. And I think that's something that I've matured into as well, is read the client. Give them what they want. Don't communicate with them how you want to communicate. Communicate with them how they want to be communicated to.
I say this too. I mean, I know that most of the time a husband and wife are going to compliment each other in some way. Like if you gave me a market report, I'd look at the one number on the sheet of paper that I care about. She would want to look at maybe some other stuff in the packet. But I think that tool that Mr. Larry teaches is amazing, because, and I don't know what you know about it, he teaches you to, on a quarterly basis or maybe a twice a year, bring a report of the equity that the person may have in their house based on comps that have sold in the area. And it's just a way for you to add value to a client by sitting down, just having a lunch with them, talking to them. Oh, here, by the way, here's a report.
So it sounds great. That also sounds like, depending on someone's sphere of influence and client base, like executing that, I can only imagine. I do think it's important to read the client. Whenever I go to educate someone, I like to approach it from a consent base. I don't want to word vomit all this stuff on you. Is this something that you want to learn more about? And then once I have their consent, then it's like the idea of, I mean, I see investors do this all the time. They go learn something, and then every person they talk to, they like word vomit. Or you and I were talking about how there's investors who are making offers on the MLS, and they're like word vomiting in an attachment where it's like, 30 pages long or whatever, right? And it's like, that might have been better received elsewise. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I don't know who you are, and then boom, I have all this stuff.
I read something the other day that someone said, if it feels like you're in someone's way, you probably are. It's like, ooh, simmer on that for a minute.
Yeah.
And I have a client that's a very good friend, and we've been friends for a long time. And she kept, reverse prospecting, looking for houses that weren't for sale. And we talked through the nuances of that and what she wanted and what her goals were. And I kept feeling like I was in her way. So I said, I'm gonna let you do this. I'm gonna let you do this. If you need me, call me. She said, well, I don't want you to not love me. I said, this has nothing to do with our personal relationship. I said, but if you don't need me, that's okay. Someone else does, and I need to focus my time there. But if I feel like I'm in your way, I probably am.
No, I think
that's
that's
okay.
I think that's a great great quote, but and it's also, I think that comes with, some emotional intelligence of being able to say, hey, like, I'm not trying to force this square into this round, the square peg into the round hole, right?
Yeah. I think we all mature, we all grow, we all evolve. And I had to grow into resting in silence. Like, hold that thought.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. It's not for everybody. I'm not for everybody.
Yeah.
Choose wisely.
A lot of
Right.
people can't handle the silence part. Yeah. So sometimes I'll mention something and I'll just, I'll say something, I'll just shut up, just as talking to people about something. For example, I just had someone contact me right before this where they had a client that basically just wanted their cake and they wanted to eat it too. They were facing foreclosure. They had a short timeline. There was a reverse mortgage on the property. They wanted to keep living in it. And the list kept going. And
So what's the problem?
right? There's no problem, right? Well, but the thing there was, I was like, okay, so you want this isn't like, basically, let's repeat back to you. You hear it from someone else's words, right? And then let's just let you sit and be like, okay, so how do you think this is going to work?
What would you do if you were in my position?
Yeah, right. And then when people, I think that's smart. And so, talk to me about one question that I love asking people is, what is a lesson that if you learned it sooner, your career might look differently in a positive way? Like, for example, like, hey, this was such an impactful lesson that I learned. If I would have learned it sooner, man, I'd be light years ahead. What comes to mind with that?
A lot of things, because I've paid a lot of tuition. When I
Same.
say,
We call those
you feel that?
seminars.
Yeah, you feel that?
We call those seminars the tuition we have to pay to learn a lesson.
Well, when you lose a deal or when you lose a client or when you lose something, I say that's tuition. I just paid into that. I just paid in because I got a lesson out of it,
Yeah.
whether it was intended or not. But I would say if I could start over specifically in real estate, knowing what I know now, I would be more intentional about setting up a proper database, consistently following up with people, and making sure that that database was deep and small, not wide
all
and
deep.
shallow,
Yeah.
but deep and small. Because even though I can lead the room, I can give the speech, I can pontificate all day long, and I can do the things, what I found through my DISC profile was that I am a situational extrovert. So when I go home at the end of the day, don't call me.
Drained.
Don't call me.
Same.
I have a pen that says my social battery, and it has like a moving thing. And I say, look, it's on E. It's done.
DI or DC?
I don't remember.
You're a D something. I'm the same way. People assume that I'm an extroverted person.
Yeah.
If being an extrovert is what will allow me to accomplish the goal I need to accomplish, I will be that.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the end of the day,
It's how do you refuel?
I get worn down. And just, my wife is one who tells me about it because she's like, I see you doing all these things. You're talking to all these people, and you get home and you don't want to talk to me. I'm like, I am just mentally and physically drained.
Yeah, I can't take another phone call. So I'm the same way. And my partner all the time is like I just got back from speaking in Tampa, and I was like, they were like, you're gonna be dead for the next 2 days.
Yeah.
Because it was just a marathon. And so I was just, and on that trip I've learned, because I go to Tampa very frequently to go spend time with my mentors. I go for a week, and there's like real estate investor meetups or, various things. There's usually a conference I'll attend. But then I also, I've had to break up time there because I just get, like, I can't go the whole week. I just get so, my battery gets so low. So then, like, I usually carve out time, because otherwise I'm like, I'm not going to make it through the week.
But at the end of the day, we'll do whatever we need to do in order to get the job done we need to get done. That's why we end up draining our batteries pretty much to the end, because if it requires, and this industry requires so much emotional exchange of energy, no matter what you're doing, like whether it's a real estate transaction negotiating, it's at the closing table, it's with the lenders, it's getting that hiccup in the file you got to address, and also keep people at bay. I get all the time. I literally had to have a conversation with one of our attorneys. It's like you have to time whenever you're going to give some potential bad news, right? Because like we'll see something coming a mile away, but we might be able to fix it before. But then, like, the closer you get to the closing, you may not be able to fix it before the closing's over with. So at what point do you warn people and say, hey, this may cause a delay? If I tell you at day one, you're going to panic on day one all the way until we get to the closing table. Or I can, try to solve that problem until the point where it's like, okay.
Have the answer before you ask the question.
So like,
right.
it's so much emotional exchange of energy that we do every day that people don't really anticipate. Like if you're a doctor, or you are, you have some sort of a trade, like if you're not fixing a toilet as a plumber, then you're waiting for the next opportunity to do that. And our job is to constantly be out networking, because we got to have the business coming in, and then we got to be solving the problems, and we got to be.
And then if you add being vulnerable on top of that, that's a whole another layer.
Animal for sure. So last question before we leave. What legacy do you want to leave, Sabrina Pierre, as a real estate agent or as a person in general, on this industry or on the world? Or
Let's ask it twofold. What do you want your impact on the industry to look like?
Ooh, that's deep, y'all. We should have rehearsed this.
It was on your question sheet, but we won't talk about
No,
that.
you're good.
Sue Derricks passed recently.
Yeah.
Y'all, I'm a tear up. I miss that woman fiercely, because she made everybody feel like they mattered. She had meaningful conversations with people, and she always came from a place of contribution.
Yeah.
She made you a better agent. She made you a better person. And I love that.
Yeah.
Would I want to be that? Would I want that to be my legacy? Absolutely. I think one of my strong suits that can be a double-edged sword is that I jump the fence. I'm not afraid to go to somebody else's office, to a grand opening or a CE class.
And I've appreciated that about you, because some people play within the boundaries of their brokerage, and they're too afraid to be seen at an event where there might be other agents. But you have frequently not let that hinder you, either as a student or networking or whatever. So I've appreciated that about you.
So I would say I would want my legacy to be, she knew her stuff and she wasn't afraid to share it. And she was fun and easy to get along with, and I'm better because I knew her.
That's awesome.
I like that.
Well, with that, you're awesome.
Well, but we do want to give her the second part, though.
Oh, what was the second part?
What do you want your legacy to be in general? What is your, because this is just, obviously we wear hats, but us in this industry is not our be all. And so,
absolutely.
So what does that look like? Obviously, with your family or life or however else you want to show up in this world.
Yeah. So, I've actually spent some time thinking about that. COVID changed everything, right? Mm-hmm. So I had my little boy when I was 38. We ended up doing IVF. So I also helped to lead a fertility support group at the Fertility Institute in Mandeville. And you'd be surprised how many times fertility treatment comes up in real estate conversations. Yeah. But that changed a lot of things for me. Nobody ever at their funeral says, I wish I would have worked more, right? Mm-hmm. So being purposeful about balancing work-life, and it's very cliche these days to say work-life balance, but it's totally true. Again, going back to that point in time that we're in as a profession, that we can throttle this. Commercial agents don't work on the weekend. Mm-hmm. And they get buyer agreements signed up front.
Yeah.
They negotiate their commission in their contract. Why are we fighting this? This is an opportunity for you to level up your profession, to be compensated according to your worth and your knowledge base, your skill set, and have a nice balance and enjoy your life as a professional. Yeah. I'm not going to call you as an attorney on a Saturday night at midnight. I'm going to call a bail bondsman, but I'm not going to call an attorney, right? So why are we any different? We can throttle this.
Yeah.
We can do this. And you know, life is short. Yeah. Life is precious. Go on the field trip. Eat the cake.
Yeah.
Because it may not be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I love that because at the end of the day, someone once said that like, there's a level of pride in which we think we're going to have tomorrow. Procrastination, it was, procrastination was a sign of pride that you think God owes you tomorrow. And it's this idea though, like it's right. Like there is, you're absolutely. And so, I love that. Friend, I've appreciated chatting with you. Let's tell the people, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for people to connect with you further?
I can tell you, do not leave a voicemail.
100% with that, sister.
I will never get that message.
Shit, I'm good about everything with that.
So call me or text me, 985-789-6660.
But don't leave a voicemail.
Don't leave a voicemail.
I love that. Thanks so much for spending time with us and for being vulnerable. I can always tip my hat to that. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.